Resonance Chapter 1, The First Echo. Edward Riverside was accustomed to the patter of raindrops against his window. It was the constant backdrop of New Haven, a city where rain seemed more of a regular character than an occasional visitor. The rhythm was almost soothing until it was interrupted by the clatter of an unmarked package landing on his doorstep. Startled, Edward opened the door to find no one in sight. Only the package, a small, nondescript box, sealed tight. Inside, he found a tape recorder and a single cassette. A baffling relic, he noted, considering the digital age. Giving in to the curiosity clawing at him, Edward played the tape. The sound of static filled the room, a familiar white noise. Then it hit. A hushed whisper mixed into the static, barely audible, followed by the gentle, haunting notes of lullaby and goodnight. And then a muffled scream. Edward's blood ran cold. He sat upright, trying to discern any detail from the chilling recording. It was the precision of every sound that unnerved him. He recognized the ticking clock in the background, an ominous countdown leading to what, he did not know. Experience taught him to heed such warnings, especially when delivered this cryptically. Thinking of his estranged daughter, Charlotte, Edward resisted the impulse to reach out. Their last encounter hadn't ended well, and although they shared a keen analytical mind, they rarely shared the tenderness of understanding. Yet the recording suggested urgency, and if anyone could help decode the sonic clues, it was Charlotte. The rain outside blended seamlessly with the audio's atmosphere, creating an eerie harmony. Edward knew this wasn't just a game. Someone's life hinged on deciphering these cryptic forewarnings. Despite being retired, his instincts reignited, drawing him into a shadowy underworld of clues hidden in sound. Edward resolved to reconnect with Charlotte. He needed her help, not just for the enigma at hand, but perhaps to reforge the ties that time and silence had strained. He stared at the recorder. This was just the beginning. As night fell, Edward replayed the tape, determined to tease out any threads, however thin. The darkness outside was vast, the midnight hour approaching, and the soundscapes held within the cassette might be the key to illuminating not only an impending crime, but a path to redemption and reconciliation. Chapter 2, A Trail in Static 4. The following morning, Edward found himself standing at the entrance to Charlotte's quaint, book-filled apartment. The hesitation was brief. He knocked firmly 3 times. Charlotte, brilliant yet eccentric, was already awake, tinkering with a project. Surprised but intrigued by her father's sudden visit, she offered a reluctant smile and invited him in. "I need your help with this," Edward said without preamble, placing the tape recorder on her cluttered desk. Charlotte's eyebrow arched with interest. She had long been accustomed to solving puzzles, albeit those confined to books and theories. This, however, was an enigma of an entirely different nature. Listening intently to the recording, Charlotte picked up nuances her father hadn't. "There's more hidden in the static," she mused, her fingers already manipulating the sound on her computer, employing tools to isolate layers of the recording. Together, they dissected the audio. Mixed amongst the eerie melody and scream was a phrase repeated persistently and rhythmically: "Time is running." It became clear their timeline was finite. Despite their estrangement, Edward was reminded of their shared unspoken language, of unraveling chaos until only order remained. As they worked, the tension between them slowly thawed. Nothing forced, merely a shared goal pulling them back into an old rhythm. Edward mentioned the ticking clock, a harbinger of dire significance, while Charlotte linked patterns within the music's cadence to a nursery rhyme, possibly relating to their victim's identity or perhaps the locale of the future crime. That night they sat, undeterred by the hours slipping by. The rain persisted, masking the city in its translucent shroud. Charlotte, absorbed in their task, noticed how exhausted Edward appeared, recalling the relentless man he used to be. This mystery had rekindled something within him. The tape might have been a prophetic warning, an eerie prediction of prospective violence. Yet, as Edward noted, the pattern emerging between recordings subtly whispered of a more personal vendetta intertwined with the unforgiving randomness of chance. Together, they resolved to follow these sonic threads wherever they led, further into the heart of a mystery and deeper into their own fractured relationship. Chapter 3. Message in the Noise. By the third day, the weather in New Haven mirrored the growing tension in Edward and Charlotte's pursuit. It was during breakfast, an unspoken agreement that had become routine over the past days, when the second package arrived. This one contained another cassette, its surface rough with the promise of revelations cloaked in obscurity. Without hesitation, Edward set it up on Charlotte's equipment, their mutual anticipation almost palpable. As expected, static instilled a brief noise before clarity emerged. A train's distant rumble echoed profoundly, bringing the clattering tracks alive. Then came a sound both comforting and disturbingly misplaced, a child's laughter, fleeting but indelible. It was a jarring mix, as though filtered through the mind of a mad composer. Edward puzzled over the symbolism. "There's something about the abandoned railways in New Haven," he suggested, memory tracing back to the now-defunct stations, once lifelines to bustling activity, now a haven for shadows and forgotten echoes. Charlotte's eyes had that familiar spark, her mind connecting dots both invisible and intangible. "I remember reading about a derelict station near the city's edge," she mused, fingers tapping on her laptop, already navigating maps and archives. The notion of life hidden amidst decay intrigued her, much like their unspoken past. Their path narrowed to a destination steeped in silence, forsaken by time. The tracks were long overgrown, memories buried under layers of neglect. If the recordings hinted towards impending tragedy, the clues must lie entwined within these echoes. Standing amidst rusting tracks and encroaching darkness, Edward felt a bizarre mix of nostalgia and dread. This place, once brimming with life, now reflected their own tenuous connection, familiar, complex, yet inexplicably daunting. As they combed through the surroundings, Charlotte kept replaying the recording, capturing fragments of distorted laughter and rusting metal, until one location seemed amplified, a point of resonance, both surreal and foreboding. The duo proceeded cautiously, sounds and sights painting vivid layers of history around them. Charlotte stumbled upon an old maintenance shed, half hidden by sprawling vines and debris. Inside, remnants of lives past quietly deteriorated, yet something felt distinctly out of place. A makeshift bed appeared recent, still showing signs of warmth. Edward recognized the implications, heart sinking with understanding. They were treading on someone's territory, a fragment of society cast into shadows, potentially their suspect or even a victim. Before they departed, Charlotte found an old railway clock, its hands frozen yet echoing through time. This fragment, much like their investigation, was locked in a perpetual moment, its silent tick urging them forward in their quest. Chapter 4: The Voice That Knows. The fourth recording arrived with an unsettling punctuality, a reminder that they were not simply chasing shadows. Something, or someone, watched their every move. As Edward played it in the safety of their makeshift headquarters at Charlotte's apartment, he couldn't shake the feeling of a spotlight turned inward. This time, the eerie static revealed more than cryptic clues. Hidden within was a voice, insidious and taunting, delivering details about Edward's past. A past he had locked away, shelved beyond the reach of regret and redemption. Charlotte immediately detected the layered manipulation, using software to filter out ambient noise, enhancing the whispers until fragments materialized, ghost-like but insistent. Edward, mistakes, fate, barely above evanescence. It was a deft maneuver, personal, precise, linking the immediate puzzle with Edward's life. Could this adversary somehow be connected to his past investigations, individuals untouched by justice yet driven by vengeance? Driven by this disturbing twist, they mapped the background, a distant yet distinct location that resonated with them. An abandoned theater, long shuttered yet alive with muted echoes of past performances and personal history. As they approached the theater, Edward drew strength from Charlotte's unwavering focus, her curiosity insatiable, lending him resilience despite the shadows clinging to his conscience. The theater loomed, a silent monolith, imposing at first but gradually yielding as they ventured inside. Memories flickered within its halls, scenes from a life entwined with the pursuit of truth and justice. He recalled cases that left scars, silent understudies to every note and whisper. Yet the theater's ghostly resonance didn't only echo his own past, it intimated a convergence, a revelation looming within reach. As they navigated this spectral haven, footsteps churned dust into the air, where history mingled with the present in a delicate ballet. Gold leaf gleamed in dim light, framing velvet seats that held secrets lost to time. Edward felt the whispers drawing nearer and wondered whether the theater's long undisturbed silence concealed a solution or doom. Navigating through corridors steeped in shadows, they found what they sought, a hidden chamber toward the back, its walls adorned with tangled recordings and photographs, an array of twisted memorabilia curated by an unseen hand. It was a shrine to an obsession, and as Edward sifted through the relics, he spotted images from cases long closed, each one an echo of his career's triumphs and failures. Charlotte, piecing together the photos and maps scattered across a table, was struck by their eerie consistency. All connected to her father. These weren't random, they were meticulously chosen. Patterns emerged, rather like the threads of their own tenuous bond, complex yet undeniable. "Dad," Charlotte murmured, "they know everything about you." Edward absorbed this fact, the reality confirming his deepest suspicions. The perpetrator of this twisted game was weaving tales across his history, an orchestrator armed with eerie sonics transcribing an endgame only they comprehended. Leaving the theater, Edward felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just to solve the puzzle laid out before him, but to dissect the personal connection, to understand who would wish to dissolve his life's narrative into chaos. And amidst this revelation, he recognized what mattered more, the growing strength of their father-daughter bond in facing the shadows. Chapter 5: Murder and Melody. As night descended upon New Haven once more, Edward and Charlotte realized a new urgency lay within the fifth installment of their auditory challenge. The muffled hum of festival music mingled with inconsistent, quickening rhythms, hints of melody uncharacteristic of an ordinary playlist, yet all too familiar for a city alive with celebrations. The crescendo of voices and instruments rose like a tide, ebbing into discernible tunes, snatches of audio almost akin to a siren call, hinting at a local musician, one who might either be the intended target or masquerading as the perpetrator. Charlotte turned her practiced ear toward the rhythm, identifying the festival, an annual celebration renowned in New Haven set to dominate the docks that weekend. Surges of people filled cobblestone streets, the cacophony of life offering an ideal theater for amplifying silences and screaming whispers. Yet beneath the jubilant notes and vibrant parade was the singular thread their enemy wove. A chilling anticipation lay veiled amidst the revelry. Beneath the laughter echoed the scream. The festival was ideal for misdirection, where shadows might readily conceal danger sweeping through the heart of celebration. Edward resolved to embed himself in this world of song and rhythm, jostling with the tide of festival-goers. Charlotte followed with her characteristic poise, their synergy, now an unspoken language finessed over days of shared investigation. Together, they surveyed the lineup until their collective gaze settled on a particular act, a local figure known for his unique compositions, rhythms remarkably similar to those within their latest tape. Approaching him backstage, Edward initiated a conversation only to discover the musician's apparent ignorance of the darker forces embroiled around him. Yet there was more hidden beneath the surface of hollow bravado. Charlotte sensed the micro-expressions of deceit in his demeanor, subtle yet significant, hinting at subterfuge within his performance. Incrementally, the festival's layers revealed that their quarry wasn't the man strumming strings wistfully, but someone orchestrating discord from the shadows, someone within the circle of trust around the musician. Edward realized quickly. He needed to react before the climax of the performance signaled their trap. As the melody reached its zenith, they intercepted a messenger, bearing a second layer of the night's performance. Sheet music, littered with markings that, when deciphered, aligned to the hidden phrases they've encountered so far. A chilling confirmation that the full tale was not yet told, their journey merely spiraling toward inevitable revelation. Successive notes began to unveil the intentions wrapped in melody. It would soon be clear whether the music alluded to salvation or acted as a requiem binding Edward, Charlotte, and the city of New Haven in a legacy of sound and darkness. Chapter 6: Shadows on the Water. Rising from the remnants of melody, a sixth tape landed at Charlotte's apartment the very next morning. Its weight was almost metaphoric, foreshadowing burdens even before its playback. When played, audio of a boat horn echoed prominently, underlined by waves lapping against a distant marina. Overlaid were voices that cried out, a desperate appeal louder than the city's usual vibrancy could suggest. It was visceral, and dread filled Edward as he realized the gravity of their next step. They stood alongside New Haven's docks, the sea's expansive horizon reflecting the city's mischievous allure beneath sunlight that belied the intensity of the mystery's crescendo. The marina, with its boats gently floating atop the surface, cloaked an undercurrent of danger, a watery grave waiting to swallow another soul if they failed. Charlotte pointed toward the old lighthouse at the dock's edge. "It's like a beacon," she said thoughtfully. "More than a structure, it's a guide for the lost, like the cries we heard." Edward understood. This place offered more than just moorings for boats. It was an intersection between past and present, a threshold filled with stories and echoes. As they moved along the pier, listening to the rhythmic scuff of their shoes on wood, the truth of the recordings loomed closer, treacherous yet almost reachable. Guided by the auditory clues and Charlotte's instinctive navigation, they found themselves at one of the oldest boats, a weather-beaten vessel, preserved as a relic, yet alive with potential significance. The recordings echoed in their minds, urging exploration within the boat's echoing corridors. Inside the cabin, Charlotte discovered a recorder still poised for playback. These voices, captured as if threatening yet yearning for release, resonated with an unusual urgency. Each voice was a cry in the night, a chilling prediction masked as a call for help. They were suspended between reality and nightmare, cryptically engulfed rather than explicitly stated. As they searched the boat, Edward's eyes fell upon a familiar figure, a photograph carefully staged beneath the captain's desk. It was his, evidence that these orchestrated tapes were no mere coincidence. The interconnectedness was clear, a bigger conspiracy aimed at unsettling not just the city, but Edward's life specifically. Realizing the depth of their peril, Edward knew they needed to communicate more than ever before. The marina's shadow was but a momentary stop. The real domain was still lurking within sound and silence, a dance of whispers not yet fully comprehended. Before dusk, they stood contemplatively, the marina bathed in golden light, aware of the stakes, the mesh of intertwining fates, their connection no longer disparate but tactile, enveloping, tying them inexorably to the promise of resolution they sought desperately amidst the echoes of the unseen midnight that danced around them. Chapter 7. Unearthing Silence. The mornings in New Haven carried an eerie quiet that only belied the looming presence of another tape, its delivery as steadfast as clockwork. This one hinted at a destination of solitude, the city's forgotten cemetery, whispered on the wind like chants of the departed seeking solace. Edward and Charlotte ventured into the silent grounds, led by static punctuations and sonic whispers that seemed almost spiritual, vibrating with meanings overshadowing the mundane. The cemetery had its own stories to tell, histories entwined in its overgrown paths and funerary relics. Each reverberating footstep across the gravel was a pursuit into silence, the silence that spoke louder than any recorded echo. The tapes whispered secrets, leading them down paths that crisscrossed, mirroring the discrepancy between what once was and what might come, bound in a circle of icy memory. Charlotte discovered a marker oddly newer than its century's rest, an anomaly that matched the coded clues. Leveraging the cryptography within the whispers, she showed her knack for completing thoughts almost unconsciously with her father. Digging gently through damp earth, they uncovered a diary, a weight once held by a trembling hand that sought peace neither sound nor silence could grant. Within its pages was an untold story, melding with their pursuit, a haunting recollection, correlating with events, archiving the collective pain of lives gone astray. Together, father and daughter read the tale, scribbled amongst marred pages, captured perhaps by someone denied justice, a soul relegated to whispered legacies echoed through time. Their research into another vault of forgotten silence didn't yield the mastermind, but it garnered an understanding of why these tapes continued to cast shadows into the heart of New Haven. It became apparent that unrecorded yet orchestrated violence overshadowed Edward's prior victories, transcending into personal vendettas yearning for reclamation. Retracing steps back to their headquarters, with the collected reverberations held tight, they embodied resolution's need, aware more than ever of the potential power of an unbroken silence. The pieces swirling forth were coalescing into form, a form demanding them to forge ahead. Chapter 8, Web of Whispers. The narrative was advancing, the rhythm almost symphonic, as yet another tape arrived that evening. This time, its soundscapes threaded together the previous recordings, seamlessly weaving a connection like webs in darkness. Charlotte manipulated decoding software to amplify repeated phrases nested within. "You must listen beyond," the voice murmured, growing clearer with each iteration. And so they did, listen, to voices overlapping, diverse perspectives intersecting, forming a sinister network of intertwining conspirators. Pooling their accumulated suspicions, Edward and Charlotte concluded that this was no solitary pursuit against them. It was a coordinated effort, an elaborate symphony composed by several players. Yet among these echoes of deception, one voice stood out, distinct and dominant, a voice they identified as the mastermind. Determined to dismantle this web of whispers, they dove deeper into each recording's intricacies. It was Charlotte who first realized the significance of certain inaudible shifts, undetectable to an untrained ear, but undeniable to her perception. The pattern pointed toward the heart of the city, a place of convergence where shadows dared not tread openly but lingered in the periphery, a theater reticent yet unwilling to let go of its actors. With confidence, born of intuition and experience, they followed these fragments through New Haven's rain-lashed streets. Their steps took them to an abandoned district, known for its historic significance and notorious for its unexplored corners. As they approached the site, a disused radio station known for its broad coverage and capacity to bind communities during its heyday, they discovered it was the perfect place for brooding over chaos and cultivating whispered rebellions. Within its walls, every story ever captured might have been condensed into a chain of echoes and haunting notes. Navigating through dilapidated hallways, Edward and Charlotte found remnants of recent occupation. A tangled reel of tapes, conspiratorial scrawls on decrepit walls, a map detailing key locations they recognized intimately. It connected everything, linking victims, potential consequences, and the past that loomed perilously close to unraveling their resolve. There, amidst tangled wires and rust-stenciled consoles, the single clear whisper emerged from the amalgam, self-assured with familiarity that chilled Edward's soul. It was a confrontational pledge against both his legacy and New Haven's stability. The voice was a relic from Edward's shadowed history, an adversary transcending forgotten margins and resurfacing with vendetta undisguised. Confrontation felt imminent, the web's weaver practically tangible in its intricacy. Their task was clear: identify the voice that bound this cycle of terror and isolate it before the city bowed to chaos. Chapter 9, The Final Recording. As they left the abandoned radio station, Edward felt a strange sense of clarity emerging amidst the chaos. The intricate labyrinth of soundscapes and whispers was narrowing, tightening around him like a net of fate. But then it came, a recording different from any other, delivered not by anonymous means but left brazenly on his doorstep, a last taunt from the puppet master. This recording wasn't enveloped in static, it was painfully personal. As Edward sat and listened, the audacity of the voice shattered his protective veneer. It wasn't an enigma he faced, it was a living specter, one that knew the contours of his life, the regrets unvoiced but never forgotten. The voice revealed an appalling truth. The orchestrator of this nightmarish symphony was someone he'd called an ally in his years on the force, a detective he had once trusted. Their shared history entwined with betrayal, revealed through whispers of past deeds left unresolved. There, on tape, the final auditory assault was mounted against him, a planned scenario with precise, mapped movements that pointed squarely back to Edward's own circle of influence. Charlotte found herself in recoil, facing shadows of history she could not fully comprehend, yet determined. She hadn't absorbed the intimacy of the betrayal as her father had. Rather, she saw the splinters for what they were, an opportunity to rewrite the ending framed by their orchestrator's hand. In the chilling climax, rumors of the orchestrator becoming manifest loomed large over Edward, as his own nightmares played out. But instead of retreating, he advanced with determination, fueled by the urgency of preservation of both city sanctity and his familial tie. The inevitable confrontation revealed a duel where loyalty met ambition turned rogue, a performance staged by rogue forces, yet rooted in past alliances. This showdown occurred not amidst cacophony, but in the sullen quietude of city streets at midnight. Edward outmatched the orchestrator's cunning, drawing upon years of intuition and unbridled tenacity. In overcoming darkness, Edward unveiled not just the face behind the whispers, but, more crucially, the emotional undertow binding his adversary's motivations. It was a hurt mirroring his own past regrets, transmuted into a lens through which redemption seemed an elusive symphony. Chapter 10. Silence. After the storm. As New Haven stirred in the early dawn, basking in a rain-washed quiet, Edward and Charlotte retraced their steps through a series of auditory veils that had concealed truth and emotion alike. They heard the city as if anew, transformed by its nocturnal odyssey. Edward, a figure now forever marked by shadows, both physical and emotional, emerged with clarity reclaimed. Holding Charlotte close, he reflected on the personal journey and the filial bond that had grown stronger through the murky depths of whispered chaos and silhouette deception. Though the streets testified to hurried footsteps and ghostly voices now gone quiet, the real crescendo persisted in the introspective silence within. For Edward, reconciling with the tape's origin meant confronting not only the lurking shadows of his career, the victories and blunders intertwined, but also accepting redemption. Sitting together amidst the quietude, Edward played the final reflective audio recording, crafted by Charlotte's adept hands, a gesture of closure more effective than any spoken apology. Her talent reverberated through the room, a masterful composition weaving past echoes into harmonious application. Charlotte's composition narrated a story through audio, about fear and courage embracing as twin maelstroms, about kinship budding from shared trials. Listening intently, Edward envisioned the melody reflecting an unforeseen path from dissonance to unity. Their connection was now one no shadow could shroud, a strength encountered amidst life's unpredictable movements. As father and daughter absorbed the resilience of their collective journey, they knew the dance of shadows and sound had reached its reckoning. In echoing silence after the storm, Edward felt at peace with what lay ahead, not whispers of untold violence, but the silent shapes carved anew by bonds unspoken, yet solidified eternally. Whatever narrative unfolded beyond midnight's memory, they would face its serenade together. And in that knowledge, the echoes within New Haven began a new tale, restoring melody to harmony under a dawn where shadows lingered not as threats, but as memories intimately shared.